This podcast is for informational purposes only and should not be considered legal, medical, or mental health advice. We speak from our personal experiences and opinions. The views expressed are solely those of the individual speaker and are not intended to malign any group, club, organization, or business.
Well, hello, everybody. I'm here today again with Rachel Bernstein, who's just become an incredible support and educator for me personally, as well as a group of us that are really working to understand what we were really a part of and how it impacted us. And not just in the harmful ways, but even the healthy ways. Like that's a big piece of sorting out, like, but wait, I got lots of good stuff, but wait, it seems like something wasn't right there, but wait, and sifting through that. So Rachel's been an incredible resource, both your podcast, Indoctrination, which is fantastic, but then the opportunity to work directly with you in a group setting and in these interviews has been really a delight. So thank you for taking the time.
Oh, it's my pleasure. Thank you so much. Yeah, it's been wonderful to get to know you and to work with you and to see also what you have created to provide support and education and being able to safely really look at and challenge some of the things that you were taught. And I think parse out what's helpful from what's not to a greater degree so that you don't have to feel like you're starting from scratch in life, without anything to show for all of your time and effort and devotion in a particular group. Because there are nuggets, and please take them, have them, use them.
Yeah.
But know where things went a bit south and why that might be impacting you in a certain way right now.
That's really great. Thank you. It's also, I think, important. Our understanding of the human psyche and human psychology is evolving. Like we know stuff now we did not know 50 years ago.
Right.
And about the human brain, I'm doing this fantastic advanced neuroscience and compassion, advanced coaching certification with a really dear friend and very reputable group right now. And I'm just learning a lot about how much we've learned about how the brain works. And I can see now looking back why some of the programs and practices that I've been involved with and even taught weren't necessarily the healthiest. But we didn't know that at the time. And I just think we have to have grace for that. I have a lot of grace for people in terms of what they do and don't do before they know. After they know, now we have some talks. So I wanted to today to create a kind of a little series of lessons, as it were, about some of these terms that are emerging as we come to understand abuse, exploitation, coercion, all as we're starting to pay attention to these things in a way that, quite honestly, we didn't. I'm 56 years old, in my 20s and 30s. What? It had to be pretty egregious harm before I would recognize, like, hey, that could be detrimental to my mental or spiritual well-being or to another. Like the obvious stuff was easy, but these more subtle ways that we as human beings are so susceptible to manipulation and coercion and exploitation. And I think it feels more important than ever as our society, social media has us all sort of connected and in a very different way. Our information sources are very separated. Our politics feel insane. And so these ideas about manipulation, coercion, like the ways in which we as human beings can be taken down roads that if we fully understand, we probably wouldn't travel. And so that's kind of my aim here, is to look at some of these terms that have become honestly quite popular, getting used, getting bandied about a lot, but I think are still pretty misunderstood in application. So let's start with the big one. And I love the name of your podcast because I love what you call it, Indoctra, and then you got the nation capitalized. So great. But let's start with that one. Indoctrination. What is indoctrination? What does that mean? Can you just kind of give us a little primer on that, and then we'll look at how it gets applied in these sort of subtle and quiet ways?
Yeah, it's interesting because you're exactly right. A lot of these terms are overused, misused, and then it gets watered down. And I think if you were to ask people to define what they're saying, they might not know. Like we'll talk about gaslighting and what that is. And when people call someone a narcissist just because they care about how their hair looks or something kind of right? No, that's not
Right.
enough for a disorder, So I think it is really good to define these things, because once you see also what's been done to you, you're going to understand more about why you're having certain after effects, why
Mm.
certain things are feeling really conflictual inside, why you're feeling like you kind of lost yourself in this in a way that other people might not, going to some self-help thing. Indoctrination is so often used as a way of grooming people to kind of under the guise, usually, of personal growth or having a breakthrough experience, or in these groups like leadership development, or learning what you need to learn to keep yourself safe. Sometimes there's fear involved, but it's really about teaching people to start to accept certain beliefs as truths, and doing it kind of in steps where you bypass the person's critical thinking, or you help them bypass their own critical thinking. It is also something that happens when you have an emotionally charged situation. Indoctrination can happen almost a lot better, if I can use that word for indoctrination, where you're pressured to accept these new beliefs without question, again, under the premise of achieving enlightenment, success, transformation, safety. But it usually comes with fear, and it usually comes in these kind of high pressured settings. It's to gradually have you accept, it's like being groomed, to gradually have you accept increasing amounts of information that's potentially contrary to what you knew or thought before, putting you in a different state. Is very purposeful. It's not just teaching someone something, it is giving them an absolute belief so that they abandon all the other ways of looking at things, and all the other ways of looking at themselves, and all the other ways of looking at the world.
I think that's the okay, that's what I'm really getting from what you're saying, is this thing about truth or absolutism. This is the answer. And I will say, in groups like the one that I was very much a part of, and many, many others, but they'll say this isn't the truth. It's an idea to try on. And what I'm now starting to understand is sort of that's the beginning. That's what it looks like a lot in the beginning. It's not, this isn't the truth. It's something to apply. And I think that's true. And many of the teachers actually believe that. But what they don't notice over time is they stop doing anything else. They stop engaging with other ideas, or if you do engage with other ideas, it's to compare it. So there's a lot of comparison made between personal development programs like the Landmark Forum and therapy, for example. Which, to me, those two things don't belong in comparison. Those are two very different things.
Right.
Very different tools. And they can work in conjunction. I know I did the Landmark Forum in part at the behest of my marriage counselor. And my marriage counselor, who had just heard about it, after we did it and we came back for a session after the forum, my now ex-husband, or the marriage counselor, was so impressed he went and did the next forum, actually. And I think that's a little part of what gets a little bit confusing, is they say, in guest rooms, I would have said to you, like, no, this isn't something to believe. It's something to try on. This isn't the truth. It's a tool.
Right.
So but you got to hang on to that through the experience then, because then you do something like the forum, any large group awareness training that has that big high in it, that big emotional high. And that, because then that happens and you're like, okay, this was so amazing. It's the truth.
Right. Yeah. It's very true. When people have transcendent experiences, they think that they have had a moment in their lives that is unlike any other, or any other that they're going to have. They're hoping to be able to have it again. And if the only time they've had it so far has been in that group, they're going to assume this is where you can have those things. And when you have so many different chemicals that are released in your system, dopamine being one of them, and even some adrenaline, just that you feel a lot and you're very activated and kind of worked up. You do think you're having this once in a lifetime experience. You might not realize that the whole system has manufactured it, that it's not necessarily you just responding as you normally would to a situation. It has been, you've been sort of wound up, and so that you can have this feeling of fervor towards something and excitement, and it feels like a drug.
Yeah, it does.
Right.
Somebody
And
my
it's
producer
smart.
talks about it as chasing the dragon, right? Like,
Yeah.
just like those drug terms. Yeah, I want that. And I'll be honest, like there's times now where I kind of miss that. I'm like,
Mm-hmm.
wait, I sort of miss the certainty
Mm-hmm.
of
Mm-hmm.
that belief set provided me when fully believed. It's not
Mm-hmm.
unquestioned. Because I will
Mm-hmm.
say I felt like I was always questioning. What I didn't realize is I was questioning to confirm.
Interesting. Great.
Right. I wasn't questioning to really question. I mean, it's taken through my diamond approach work is actually where I've really learned to be in much more of an open curiosity questioning mindset where I'm open to whatever information comes in. And I think there's something else you said that's important, which is the bypassing. So I'm
Mm-hmm.
bypassing my own alerts or alarms or well, that doesn't seem right. That
Mm-hmm.
doesn't seem right.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I hear a lot of people who go, the staff, yeah, I saw that they were working those crazy hours and that wasn't right. But the programs are great. And I'm grateful that they were doing that. And,
Mm-hmm.
you know, now we're finding out, myself included, even though I was deeply in the organization, the amount of emotional and psychological and verbal abuse and even physical abuse that was happening.
Mm.
You know, that was not, but, and people are always like, but they could leave, you know, why not? And I'm like, well, because they're fully indoctrinated into the idea that what they're doing is transforming the world, AKA saving the world.
Right.
And there's another piece, which is the pressure, the social pressure.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So that's a vital component as well, is you're in a group, whether it's at the program level, and you don't want to be the odd one
Yeah.
out. That's a very basic thing. So you start to accept ideas or accept experiences even that maybe don't even feel genuine for you, but you're not going to get left behind.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. It's a real falsehood where these sorts of ideas are presented as kind of relaxed and optional, like, well, just try it on, you know. If that really were the case, then it would be fine for people to say, yeah, I tried it. Meh, it's not for me. I'm going to go do something else. And people would say, we wish you well. You really were free to reject this kind of teaching as the truth, or you could still hang on to whatever connections and friendships you made, even if you felt differently. I mean, but that just doesn't exist here. There is this idea, like where I think you're really being made to feel that it's much safer and you have much more freedom than you really do, but you're not told that ahead of time,
Well,
that you're going to be socially pressured, you know.
right. And you just said so, you know, the group I was in, Landmark, was really good at evading the cult moniker. That's why they were so
Uh-huh.
upset when my book is titled, Wait, is this a cult? Because they say things like, no, our work encourages you to get in communication, encourages you to restore connections, and da-da. And that is true on the surface. But when you look over time, what you hear, you know, and again, it gets stronger and stronger the more involved you are, right? But what you hear is people kind of drifting away from friendships of other people who haven't done the forum
Yeah.
because they just can't talk to them. They don't
Mm-hmm.
have the same language. Red flag. When we get to that point, we're seeing this happen in a larger scale in our society where suddenly we can't talk to each other because,
Right.
well, you believe this way and I believe this way, so we can't talk. We can't be friends. You've been indoctrinated into something if you start in
Mm-hmm.
life, right? If
Mm-hmm.
you start acting that way.
Mm-hmm. Right.
And indoctrinated to the point where you're not the one doing the thinking. That's kind of how I think about it, is the ideology
Okay,
is
right.
my locus of control, is my identifier.
Right.
It's not me wielding a tool. I am the tool. Like, it is the thing. But the separation is very quiet and subtle. And then I've heard this now also from a number of former staff, particularly, that their parents, and actually I've heard from a few parents and relatives of people who are deeply involved in work at Landmark, that are like, hey, we kind of know our relatives in a cult and we love them, and we just want to, like, we kind of say nothing and we just be here when we can. And they're sitting by on the sidelines waiting until their relative or their friend sort of snaps out of it.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So you got to look at the actions, not just the words, to
Right.
know whether or not you're being indoctrinated. When you say, like, you gotta look at the disconnection between what's the message and the result.
Mm-hmm. Right. Right. I mean, we have that throughout our lives where we get these messages that really help us know what's really happening here, even if the words don't match. Like if someone says, oh, it's fine if you don't want to do this. Like, you don't have to join us for whatever we want you to do. Like, we're going to be in the back of the school in high school and smoking pot, whatever. It's fine. You don't have to join, you know? And then you say, okay, good. So I won't. And then you want to hang out with them later. Oh, sorry, oh no, you're not invited to that party. No, no, we're all laughing about something, but as soon as you walk up, we're going to stop and just wait till you're to really pass by. We're going to let you know it was actually not okay to say no. We're not going to say it. We're going to show you. And so then you get the message, but it's very hurtful and it's hard. And sometimes it's hard. You have to put the clues together. Like, so much of what happens with indoctrination, because they know they're introducing you to ideas that might not be socially appropriate. They might be things that other people outside will say, that doesn't sound right. So they will tell you to keep it secret a lot of time, but they won't say, you have to keep the secret. They'll talk about how other people might just not understand, or other people might try to sabotage this, so that you need to not share it with them. We're not telling you you can't. We're just telling you all the possible dangers of it. And also, if you do end up sharing something with someone we don't want you to, then that person wants you to leave, we're going to say, well, we told you so. Like, there's no way you can win in that situation, because they really have their agenda. They're just not being upfront about it.
What's the role of specialized language in indoctrination? And
Yeah.
I
So,
think there's a big connection there. And just for my Landmark friends that are out there listening, because there's a whole spiel about the deterministic screen, and every specialized knowledge has a particular set of terms, et cetera, et cetera. But
yeah.
what they left out was their terms are made up. They've actually changed the words and the definitions. If I go into the medical profession, yeah, there's all kinds of crazy words I don't understand, don't know how to pronounce, can't say, but they're based in Latin. They're based in sort of the long-standing understanding of those words. And yes, words change meaning and
Mm-hmm.
meaning over time. That's a part of human society as well. But where I'm actually redefining the word,
Mm-hmm.
that's my dictionary has become my number one app used, but it's also my big red flag checker.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Because people
Right.
send me stuff all the time. And they're like, what do you think of this? Is this a called this? And I will literally look up the way they're using some words.
Yeah.
And if
Right.
they're using them in ways that are super inconsistent or twisty from the dictionary, the already 5 definitions for the word, I'm like, something's going on here. So can you just say a little bit about the how language and indoctrination go fit
Yeah.
together?
Yeah, it is. They're best friends, so they're inextricably tied. Language is changed, first of all, so that you start to become dependent. What I mean by that is not only are the messages about growing dependency, and that's the only way you're going to get something by kind of leaning in and needing this group and being open to its teachings, but when things are redefined and other definitions are given, you are then dependent on the person who holds the language key, who can then tell you what something means. It's like if you have, I'm looking at my keyboard, right?
Yeah.
Like, who would know that, right? Control C means something unless someone tells you, right? So I think it is a very purposeful way to have to kind of put you in the inability to be independent and
Hmm.
just get things on your own and be able to master it on your own, because a lot of it doesn't necessarily make sense, and it is a very different way of looking at it. Like, if you don't want to do something, let's say in a large group awareness training or whatever, and you can say, this doesn't feel right to me, there would be a language shift which would put the onus back on you also, which is part of what they do with language. They would say that you're acting outside whatever, your integrity, you're not showing responsibility to yourself. Your breakthrough is on the other side of this commitment, so you need to make a commitment. Like, I don't know what that means, but you kind of get the random idea of it. And also, one of the ones that I talk about a lot, like on my podcast, is that breakdowns are often redefined as breakthroughs. So it's
Ugh,
given this
that's a
positive,
massive portray in the Landmark commercial. Break down to break through. And it was
right?
in yoga when I worked with Yoga Man too. Like, no, we're going to break down, although he was more health conscious than I would say the Landmark people. Like, he wasn't trying to
Mm-hmm.
actually break the body, but he was trying to break that resistance or break that limit,
Yeah.
um, and pushed. And he was very, very, very good at knowing the body's limits
Okay.
and but pushing people right up to that edge and so on. And look,
Right.
that's not my jam. I don't really. I'm one of those people. I'll just sit in my comfortable chair with my cup of tea knitting. Thank you very much. Like, I don't
Right.
like that
Right.
kind of physical stuff. But well, there
Yeah.
was another thing because you were saying earlier about how don't use this language, or this language is secret. But in groups like Landmark or even the yoga or, soul cycle, whatever, in particular classes, is they'll tell you, no, there's nothing secret about it. But for them to actually get it, which in Landmark is called discover for yourself, they have to come do the program.
Mm,
So it really does become a sales tactic.
mhm,
That's
mhm,
something I think our, current version of capitalism and has really set us up for. Like, I have to go patent and trademark my particular phrase and words, and then I turn those phrases and words into a product that only I can deliver, and
mhm,
blah 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 blah. And that
right,
whole system in and of itself is very um, concerning. Like, it sets us up.
mhm.
So, how would one defend, as it were, from indoctrination? Like, any tips for that? Like, how I can navigate that?
Right. So you need to be aware of some things happening, which sometimes you don't realize while you're in it. You have to actually take sometimes a step away,
Mm,
kind of call in sick, even if you're not sick. I mean, it's interesting with COVID. There were many people who got involved in cults that didn't before. Many cults were, able to advertise online in a whole new way and get people to become in a cult, even in their living rooms, um, or on their computers from wherever. But there are also a lot of people who left because they couldn't be in the presence of other people in the group. They couldn't go to the workshop. The thing that had been crafted as a way to get you to to kind of have your skepticism disarmed, to fast track you into it, was suddenly not there. And so people were able, with that distance, to have that perspective. I talk about how, in order to take a good picture of a landscape, to really see, you have to step back.
uh-huh.
And so you have to step farther away from it to really see it. So it's the same thing. People with that little bit of a break, we're able to kind of see what you also want to know. And this is really important for people. You were talking about how you miss the feeling of the dopamine rush, the drug. Anyone would. Anyone would. But you want to notice that. You want to notice that this group is generating a certain level of excitement that actually potentially feels unnatural, and wonder why that's happening and what they have to gain by doing that to you, by cultivating that in you. Also, why it is that your heart's suddenly racing, but not in an excited way, but almost in a panicked way, because they can create this false sense of urgency. You have to sign up. You have to get other people to sign up. Let's move this forward. Let's, save people's lives. And so, does that really need to happen right now? Do you need to? It's like, I don't know if it's still on the air because I barely watched it then, but the Home Shopping Network, when they say, if you like this bracelet, there are only 10 left and you have to order by midnight. And then if you're up really late at 2 a.m, it'll say the same thing because it's a replay.
Beware. So I would say beware of specialized language that
Uh-huh.
doesn't match the conventional or is, quite distinct. Be aware of urgency
Mm-hmm.
or exclusivity
Mm-hmm.
are all kind of red flags. You said something in one of our group sessions that I really appreciate. I don't remember exactly how you said it, but I walked away with like, there isn't anything that couldn't stand another few hours or another day. Like if it's as tomorrow as it is today, then maybe it's something to consider. And I do that a lot when shopping. Like if I see something and I'm like, oh, I have to have that pair of jeans or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
And, and I'm like, if I still want them in 2 days, then maybe, right? Like
Right. Yeah.
we've gotten so used to this sort of instant gratification culture.
Yeah. Right.
So that kind of pressure and whatnot, I think are really intense. And then there was something you just said when you were talking about the experience. It's the certainty. It's not the high so much. Like that felt good, although it was quite exhausting. I always remark when I leave the spiritual group that I study and work with now, and you leave a weekend and you're just so zenned out and relaxed, not exhausted. I used to come home from a landmark weekend and literally my kids knew, don't talk to me for 48 hours because I just can't even formulate a thought because I'm just completely spent.
Yeah. Right.
That's not,
Right.
I mean, that's okay once in a while, but it's not that kind of peak experience can be, fun once in a while. Go on a roller coaster. So.
Right.
But
Yeah.
the certainty, there's something addictive about certainty too. Like I know how to handle this now.
Mm-hmm.
I know what's right. And I've been noticing that for myself in the current political climate, that it's now become a red flag for me internally when I'm certain.
Mm-hmm.
I'm absolutely certain that this side is right. And not that it isn't necessarily right. Like we just had, an assassination. That's wrong. Like assassination is wrong.
Right.
So, but when I get rabid about it,
Right.
now I'm like, okay, wait, and there's something
Right.
hooked in here that probably is, if nothing else, it's not healthy for my nervous system.
Absolutely. And it's hard because it is a high. And once those parts of your brain are activated, your reasoning and logic often quiet. Your access to language to understand also what happened also sometimes darkens a bit. Like if they look at brain studies and what is fired up and lights up and what parts get kind of dark and quiet. And so when you are flooded with these kinds of chemicals, you're not necessarily able to think. You're not able to assess. You're not able to notice what you need to notice. And so it's structured that way with these emotional highs, which breaks down your defenses. And it's like these systems are designed to override your critical thinking, to override your instincts. So when you have this moment away, notice whether it is that you're thinking something that feels like at odds with what you're learning, or just that you're feeling like, oh my goodness, I feel like I'm almost having like this delicious manic episode. Because people actually who have bipolar will say sometimes the manic episodes can be unpleasant, but sometimes they're wildly pleasant.
Oh no, it can be really great.
Right. And so I do think that there is something also about indoctrination where you want to see it as, if you can, inherently disrespectful.
Hmm.
And I think that's important because I think people deserve better than to be indoctrinated, and to look at it that way. Like, if I wanted to offer you some information, I wouldn't set up a course for you where I would be making sure that the ground you're standing on is suddenly made out of ice and you're
Hmm.
just going to slide along as I'm pulling you, without your knowledge, without your consent, without you knowing where I'm pulling you and why I'm doing this and who it's for. And it's usually not for you. And
Yeah.
so I think being respectful is saying, listen, this is something I believe in, or this is something the group teaches, may or may not work for you. You're welcome to stay for this workshop, and it might feel really cool, but it might also not be what you need. And just let us know. We'll be fine either way. That's respect. But I think to just, it's like slipping a drug into someone's drink. And so you want to make sure that people know what they're about to be stepping into, that it's not just information they're going to be getting, but they're going to be whipped into some kind of frenzy, but without being able to consent to it ahead of time.
Yeah. Or taken into a high. Like somebody
Yeah.
told me that in an insight training that they did, they were actually told not to make any major life decisions for 2 weeks after the program.
Mm-hmm.
I was like, that's
Mm-hmm.
so responsible
Yeah.
because
Yeah.
that is saying like, oh, you're going to have a really high cathartic experience, but you want to let that settle before you start making moves. And I was like, that's responsible. The other
Right.
one I would watch out for that came up as you were saying that I have heard a lot is the backhanded, yes, you can leave. Like I had somebody invite me the other day to they're involved in Juice Plus and they invited me to a webinar or something with a doctor. And I said, look, I've told you a couple of times now that I have a health team. I love them. I work with them and that I am a completely full cup and I'm not interested in, any of these kinds of things. And, this is a lovely person that I know she does not have ill intent.
Mm-hmm.
And she said, oh, I didn't get from our conversations that you weren't interested in expanding your health with your partner. Like it was an insult wrapped as an
Mm-hmm.
acceptance of my no. And
Mm-hmm.
I've seen that a lot. Like, oh, I got it. Okay, you're not interested in improving your life right now. I
Right.
understand. Like this fake compassion or empathy, or that's probably one of the fastest ways. I mean, I actually like some Juice Plus products. I would never get involved with the organization, but I do happen to know they have some decent products. And but now I'm like, no, I'll find that product someplace else. Like it's such a turn off once
Mm-hmm.
you know
Mm-hmm.
once you can see it. And that was
Yeah.
my hope. Like once you can see like, ooh, there's an indoctrination element here. Like there's something for me to believe, to accept.
Right.
Um,
Right. Yeah. And it's interesting. The
it's better than
certainty.
other things or better than everything else or whatever.
Right, exactly. So, right. So you're already engaged because of the certainty, because it has the answers. So you want this to be what you think it can be. You want this to be the place where you can just do a trust fall in the world, in life, and go, I'm going to be able to be carried along by this thing that has the answers. And with more and more commitment to it, I'm getting closer and closer to the answers. What is interesting is exactly as you're talking about with this person who's, oh, you're not, really invested in your health or whatever. There is a new narrative that becomes also
Yeah.
part of the indoctrination process, where I will tell people and I'll caution people not to accept another person's narrative. Like if they're saying, I don't feel ready, or I'm not interested, or this doesn't feel right to me, and somebody else will start calling that your fear, and your fear gets in your way. And so there's this other language around it, which shows that you have a problem that you need to overcome rather than the group having a problem that you're responding to. And so there is like this shifting back to you being the one at fault, not them, And so you then can't use your critical thinking. And if you use it, you have to use it against yourself. So that is this redirection that's done through language, through shifting the narrative. And then there's this other social piece, right? Because if this were just you and one other person, still there's a social piece there. Like some people are worried. Like I have this in therapy. Some people are upset. They're worried I'm going to be upset with them if they have to cancel their appointment or if they're late. They're sure that I'm never going to see them the same way. It doesn't even cross my mind. And so you can still have that one-on-one, but in a large group, this is also something to notice. Do you feel like you are really saying what you need and no one's listening? Are you saying, I need to take a break or I can't go tomorrow, I don't feel well? And you're getting a lot of calls and a lot of emails and a lot of texts, and people are redefining what you're doing and why you're doing it. And they are giving a new narrative about it, but they're just not leaving you alone. And so notice that. And it's not that they care. And it's not that they're not just not abandoning you or whatever they might call it. And to notice also if you start to feel worried that you are going to be seen a certain way by a group of people and you barely know them. And sometimes this starts to happen right at the beginning. And that you're somehow going to be seen a certain way or you're going to be disappointing other people. I remember there was this, and so notice the social pressure and the potential guilt and shame. There was this person, I don't know if I told you this story, who said to me, I'm involved in this group. It's a self-help group. It's actually here in LA, not far from my office. And awkwardly, one of the co-leaders is someone I know from, she was a parent at my kid's school. Okay, great. But this guy was involved. He said, I don't know why my wife has such a problem with this. I am learning about taking responsibility. And I said, tell me about that. So to narrow it down, this is after a few sessions. The story is he kept missing family moments. He kept missing holidays because that's when they would plan their big events. And so he was always feeling torn, but you had to choose to do the things with the group because that showed that you're following through with your commitment. Forget about that you're not at your kid's 6th birthday party and you're not at Christmas or whatever holiday you celebrate, but you have to make a commitment to the group. So, and he said, and it really is necessary that I'm there. And I said, tell me about being necessary. And he said, well, for example, I couldn't go out with my wife to celebrate our anniversary because I had to go to the ropes course. And I said, what is the ropes course? Well, we needed to go to this trail up in some canyon and learn to trust each other and do this ropes course. And they had a certain amount of people that had to be on this ropes course in order to make it safe for everyone. That's not the way a ropes course works, right? You can have as many people as you have. Someone's leading it. Someone will count how many people are there and will decide who should be a partner. And if someone doesn't have a partner, then the person running it will be there. There will always be enough. So, but he believed that if he didn't show up to this, someone could fall and die, and that would be on him. And he was so clouded. It was like such a haze that he was in, that he was a scientist and he could have done the math. Like he could have figured out the probability, but he wasn't going to look logically at it because they had also told him not to do that was going to get in the way of him being fully immersed in the possibility of it. That's a word, right? That's used.
They use all those terms like, oh, you've got to just overcome your limiting beliefs. That's your fear. To me, that's another big thing. When somebody is telling you, you said it better in that they're narrating it for you. But when they're telling you what's actually going on with you or what the real interpretation is or what that really means, that's somebody is now exercising their control over your autonomy. And that becomes a problem. And there's a way, as we start to learn healthier ways to cohabitating, we are an interdependent species. We do need each other, and we can be there for each other without dominating each other. That's, I think. All right. Well, this has been a really great one on indoctrination. I'm going to pause on indoctrination here, and we're going to do a couple quick ones on a few others.
Okay, cool.
Yeah, I'm going to actually stop it.